And I wrote down some stuff about it. You know what? It's really hard to get through. It's kind of it was funny, but not. It wasn't supposed to be funny.
I don't think zombies killing everybody is very funny.
But this was supposed to be really serious like Gates of Hell sort of zombie movie. But these zombies were, well, I'll get to that. So, City of the Living Dead. And my first thought is, you know, it starts off with the priest, and the priest is kind of walking through the cemetery, and then it cuts away to these people doing a seance in New York.
In the middle of the street? Or?
No, like they're in their apartment. They're not just in the middle of the street doing seances. But this priest is in a cemetery somewhere else out of New York City. It's the City of the Living Dead.
Right, the whole city.
So this city over here, and they're not talking about New York. At first I thought, oh, they're talking about New York. Something's going to happen with New York.
Zombies.
So the priest basically is just kind of walking, and he has this look in his eye like, I'm a priest.
The swagger of a priest.
Yeah, and he looked worried about something, and then you know, they're doing the seance around the table. Again, they cut to that, and all of a sudden, everything starts vibrating, and everybody starts freaking out, and the priest hangs himself in the cemetery.
Why?
They don't explain why. It just kind of happens. I don't know if he was guilty about something, or...
Okay, alright, so he's dead.
So he's dead. He's just got this look in his eye, and he's got, you know, and this is all like, it's done by, you know, the Italian cinema people. So it's overdubbed. But it was, you can kind of follow their mouths, what they were saying.
The movie was done by Italians or the seance?
There was mostly Italians in this movie.
Okay. Alright, so it's like the Bronx. It's like around the Bronx area.
I'm not talking about Italians. I'm talking about like spaghetti western, but with zombies.
I see. Spaghetti, I see what you did there.
Yeah. So this guy's hanging, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, the gates of hell open. This priest hung himself, so apparently that opens the gates of hell.
Okay.
And, you know, it's like when you ring the church bell, the angels gets its wings.
Right.
When you hang a priest, the gates of hell open, apparently.
Okay.
So that's what the base of this movie was on. And
sounds like a pretty good movie.
You know, as soon as he hung himself, a zombie came out of the ground. But that was the only time you saw the zombie. So
in this movie, zombies were resurrected by the hanging of a priest.
Yes and no.
Okay.
There's a fine line between what was going on and what was supposed to be going on, apparently, according to this title of this movie.
Okay.
This guy comes out of the ground, a zombie, real dead looking.
Very dead.
And they cut away back to these people.
And doing the seance.
Doing the seance, and all of a sudden the girl in the seance, she dies.
During the seance.
Like right at the end, after everything starts vibrating and people are going crazy.
Okay.
So, she dies, and then the cops come and investigate why she died, and they couldn't really explain why she died. This girl wakes up, and she's not dead.
No.
You'd think with modern technology and how they embalm people, they would have figured that out before they injected her with a bunch of...
Did they embalm her?
Maybe they didn't embalm her, but I don't know who doesn't get embalmed. Isn't that part of, like, health services? Like, you have to be embalmed?
I'm not sure all of New York is privy to health services. I think in a lot of areas of New York, they may kind of circumvent health services. They may just kind of...
But she was done up all pretty. You'd think that...
After she died?
Yeah. You'd think that she had been embalmed. They'd gone through the trouble of putting her in a coffin and dressing her up in nice clothes.
Why bother embalming her? Because you're just going to bury her anyways. It's like wasting money.
I guess, if they don't know the difference. She looks like she's fresh.
Did she turn into a zombie?
No. She was alive. She just came out. Something happened.
So wait, she came out of the ground.
No, this reporter guy who was following the whole incident, what happened in the seance, heard her. It was like one of those things where he hears like, and he stops. And like there's wind blowing and stuff, and he hears other people talking, then he keeps walking, but then he hears... And meanwhile this girl's like pounding on the coffin and screaming, "Ah!" and she's digging her nails and her fingers are bleeding, she's trying to get out of this coffin. So finally, like after 5 minutes of him going, and hearing, and he keeps stopping, he goes back and digs her up.
Well, I personally, if I heard that, I wouldn't go dig somebody up. That wouldn't be the first thing that comes to my mind.
Then he heard screaming. He heard screaming after that.
Okay, well I still wouldn't assume someone's buried underground.
Well, I mean, if you're walking through a cemetery and you hear somebody screaming...
Why am I walking through a cemetery?
Because he was at her funeral, apparently.
Well, that's very nice. So, Was anybody else at the funeral? Did anyone else witness this, or did you just dig her up?
You know, I honestly can't remember.
You probably blacked that part out, didn't you?
I did. It was almost like a repressed memory.
Okay, so but in this movie, because you know how zombie movies all differ on how zombies come about and how zombies get killed. How did they kill zombies?
Nobody killed any zombies
In the whole movie.
in the whole movie. There was no zombies harmed in making this film.
So the zombies won, basically.
Well, no, because at the end, well, I have to get to the end. At the end, they actually went to go to the gates of hell.
What happened in the middle?
I wrote down here that something interesting. This zombie in the front, the first zombie who pops up, the zombie we never see again throughout the whole movie,
Okay.
pops up like he's buried in 2 inches of soil.
Oh.
Now, aren't you supposed to bury people at 6 feet?
At
in a coffin?
minimum. At minimum.
In a concrete bunker?
Once
or
again,
something?
though, labor is expensive nowadays and the economy's bad, so they may have kind of cheated the system.
It's almost like they just kind of put a layer of dirt on him and said, okay, he's dead, he's buried.
So basically, in this city, they bury people 2 inches deep with no embalming fluid.
This is different. This is a different. This zombie that we see with the dead priest, it's in another town.
Okay. But
Altogether.
is it somewhat close to that town? Cause maybe
It's in the same state, I believe. I think we're talking about Upper New York and.
we're not up in Canada, are we? Because
No.
that's okay. That's a whole different.
They know how to bury people up there.
So, no zombies died. Not
No
one.
zombies died.
Okay.
You know,
So, did any humans die?
yes, there were plenty of human deaths in this movie.
Any interesting deaths? Anything out of the ordinary?
Yes, you know what? These zombies weren't your regular zombies who kind of like come out of the ground and then kind of lumber up to you. These are like the transporting zombies.
Oh. Like a
Like,
sci-fi zombie.
Almost like they were like on the Starship Enterprise that had converted to zombies and were like beaming down and then ripping people's heads off, like ripping their brains, specifically the back of their head and like pulling. And this is a really gross movie. They had really good gore. I was very impressed.
Do you think that's the easiest way to the brain, the back of the head? Like, do you think that they're intelligent zombies? Because,
Yes, I believe there was some motivation behind these killings,
okay,
rather than just being a zombie.
so they're premeditated murders.
The very first woman who died, you know, of course they cut to these kids who are making out in this, in a Land Rover in the 70s, which is kind of weird, I find, because it's New York. Who drives a Land Rover in the 70s?
2 kids that are about to die.
Apparently. And then all of a sudden, she sees the priest, and he's kind of standing there. Like,
When he's dead or alive?
when he's dead.
Okay.
Like, they're in the woods, and they're parked, and then all of a sudden she looks out and she sees the priest standing by the car. And he's just kind of like got this look on his face, like, look, the one when he was hanging. He just had this look on
Very
his face.
disappointed look in his face,
I don't know if
probably.
it was disappointment, I think it was more like,
Like a rigor mortis.
I don't know if it was even rigor mortis. It's hard to put my finger on.
Okay, we'll
So
skip that.
she tries to look away, but she can't, and their eyes lock. And the more she looks at this priest, the more she, like, all of a sudden blood starts coming out of her eyes, like she's crying blood. But like her hair is brushed just like this, and you can kind of see the tubes, and she's crying blood. And then all of a sudden she starts puking her guts out, literally, like she's vomiting up like sheep's brains and like guts. And then she turns into a zombie, and her boyfriend turns into a zombie. This is some kind of telepathic zombieism.
Man, imagine if that priest would have went to like do a sermon or something at a church, and he would have stood up there, and then everyone would have looked at him. Everyone would have puked their guts out.
It's kind of like, if he's going to hang himself, I don't think he wants to do mass anymore.
Okay, well,
I'm
I'm just
just
saying.
rule that out.
Well, he could probably just go ahead and do that if he wants, though.
You'd think.
So was he looking for these kids in the park? Or
I don't
he
know.
Just...
I don't know what the connection was between these kids and the priest. Maybe the priest was just kind of wandering by. And he's like, just wanted to see what they were doing. They were in the car.
I would have looked too, probably.
Yeah, and so yeah, she's the first death, and then basically everybody starts going after each other. That doesn't make any sense.
No, well,
The girl all of a sudden shows up next to somebody, and like, you know, there's a scary part where there's music, and something bad's gonna happen, and all of a sudden like the zombie appears, and they kind of look at each other for a second, and the zombie just goes and rips off the back of their head.
spoiler alert. Some people may not have seen this movie yet.
Well, there are brains involved.
Okay.
This actually had a maggot storm in it, which I was quite impressed.
Oh, it's more religious effects. See, this is obviously a very religious movie because you have a priest killing people by looking at them after he hangs himself, and kind of like raining frogs. It's raining maggots.
Well, no. What I mean by
It's like
maggot
raining
storm
men.
is they kind of, there was a scene where there's a psychologist who's treating a woman for depression or what have you, and she lives in this town where these people are getting looked at by this priest. And I know. So they were in this house, and all of a sudden there's maggots flying at them. The window flies open, and the wind starts blowing in, but maggots are coming in, and they're sitting there going like this, and these maggots are hitting their face and landing, and they're real maggots or mealworms or something with a fan, and somebody had to sit there with like a bucket of maggots and push it in front of the fan and blow it into them. And for like 5 minutes, it was just a maggot storm. Nobody could figure this out. There was never any mention of this maggot storm again. As soon as it was done, there weren't any maggots anywhere, really.
Was this a very low budget film?
You know, I'm going to say it had some budget to it. I mean, it wasn't as bad as, like, I don't know, the Blair Witch Project.
I don't want to go off on a tangent here.
What's going to
Because
happen?
that's not what I do. But we've had many discussions about the impending zombie attacks on the world.
Yeah.
Because in 2012, obviously, the world's going to end. They wouldn't lie to us.
So the zombies are going to have to occur before this.
Well, I'm thinking around the same time. Winter zombies. Because they said December 21st, 2012.
Let's see if we'll be safe then.
I don't think so. And there are some movies out there where zombies can survive in cold weather.
Can they survive the end of the world?